Good morning. So what was very inspiring about the last presentation is that Gary not only talks the talk, but he walks the walk. Odesk is an amazing company. And it's a great example of where they're growing with their permanent colleagues as well as using their own platform to grow their business. So you don't necessarily eliminate the need to hire a lot of people, even if you're contracting out a lot of those people. And the culture around Odesk and their ability to do what they do is frankly second to none. So it was great to hear Gary up here give an overview. I'm with TriNet. We support 7,000 small businesses in the US. They're emerging growth businesses, and we are seeing some phenomenal trends. I want to talk about some of those trends and talk about what I see, or at least my experience with what works and what doesn't work. All right. Gary talked a little bit about the recruiting landscape. What I've seen in the last couple months is unprecedented. The hiring among emerging growth companies has never been greater. So what we've seen is 1,000 net new hires on an install base of 100,000, 2 out of the last 3 months. So what you're seeing is an average annual growth rate of 12%, and that's net. That doesn't mean people are hiring 12%. It means net of laying off whoever they're changing out, they're actually hiring 12% incremental talent. And that's pretty amazing because we were seeing declines of 2 and 3% on a monthly basis a year ago. So the hiring trends are fairly dramatic, and obviously we're all in this room because we have a quest for great talent. Your companies depend on intellectual property, and what we're seeing is that it's harder and harder to get that talent. Now, it's a tough discussion because everybody in this room has hired great people. You would not have a company, you would not be paying to come to this seminar if you didn't have great people and are building a company. Where we see this break down is as the company grows and you delegate that responsibility to line management, to new hires who don't particularly understand the culture, what they do with that is where the problem occurs. So obviously hiring mistakes are very expensive, we all know that, and there's a lot of aspects to it that we may not have put into a process when we did the original hires for our company, but are absolutely necessary from my vantage point to put into effect as you grow your company. So hiring itself really needs to be a business process. Again, not telling you anything you don't do or don't know, but frankly, most companies do not do this, and we see it every day. And we see it in 3 particular areas: planning for success, recruiting, and then selecting the candidates. Very different processes. It is amazing how many people start out with inadequate or no job descriptions. It's amazing where the salary range has not been computed up front, where people really don't understand where they're going to fit into the organization, and it's not surprising the level of failure that's out there. So I also want to pick up on another probably important point, which was a question from the audience earlier, which is the whole area of developing talent. The other big mistake that I see across all of our member companies is that people hire for knowledge and skills. And we've already said that, right? People hire for knowledge and skills. What they don't look at and spend enough time doing is looking at core values and motivation. And the core values and motivation go to the core aspects of your culture. So as Gary said, it's important to have the right locations, it's important to have the right environment within the organization, but what we're seeing is people say, okay, this person has Web 3.0 experience, we want to bring that person in. I see their resume, they've done these kind of jobs, similar to the kind of jobs I have, let's bring them in the door. Company gets to the size of 20, 30, 40 people, the CEO looks around and says, this isn't the culture, this isn't my intent, and the difference is that they didn't look at the core values and motivation. The main reason that that's so important, the main reason it's so important in your company is that it's something that fundamentally cannot be changed in a business environment. It can't be changed in a business context. You can train people on new technologies, new processes. You can put people on different teams, you can mentor those people, but you are not going to change a core value or the motivation of any particular individual. So hiring is a business process. It should be akin to a business plan. We're seeing a lot of companies moving in this direction. There's tools out there. So there's great recruiters. There's great web products that can go out and blast your job out. But if you haven't figured out what the job description is, what the criteria for success are, what your measurement criteria look like, how that person's going to work independently or part of a team, individual contributor, you have a hard time matching the requirements with the individual that ultimately comes in the door. And where it falls down and where it starts to get interesting is when you go through the interview process. If you don't have the formalized interview process, you don't get the right result. So develop a strategy, define the stakeholders, and very important is to have that recruitment plan. You need a big top of the funnel. We talked about the issues around having a good corporate name and being a good corporate citizen. I would add to that earlier discussion that being involved in local charities, in Habitat for Humanity, being involved, even small companies get great reputations by being involved in the local community. Local community gives you this wide net of opportunities to bring in net new talent regardless of whether they're developers or marketeers or so on and so forth. This is what we see day after day. You have a company, 20 to 30 people. The CEO is growing the company. A line manager says, I need somebody. CEO says, great, it's in the budget, go find that person. They pick up the phone, they call a recruiter. There's a lot of great recruiters out there. They have a 15-minute conversation. The recruiter goes off. 3 weeks later, comes back with a bag of resumes, and none of them meet the requirements. Well, why is that? It's pretty simple. There was never a requirement. There was never a job description. And then suddenly panic strikes in because they have the budget, they have the business requirement, they have the project to do, but they haven't even gone to the basic level of marketing the company, positioning the job, defining success criteria, or putting together a reasonable interview process. Generally, what happens is the recruiters blame for the lack of success on the project. So more resumes come in, more time is spent, and my recommendation simply is to go back to a very defined business process, and you'll get it done incredibly quickly. The interview process is really, really important. I'll tell you a story. This happened to me many years ago. I was a frontline manager back on the East Coast. I was with a startup. The CEO was in Santa Clara, California, and he interviewed everybody as a final interview candidate. There was 3 levels of management between him and I. And the bottom line was that I was hiring a sales rep in Boston. I interviewed him, my boss interviewed him, my boss's boss interviewed him, and this individual flew to California for the final interview with the CEO. I got a call at midnight East Coast time, so 9 o'clock. The CEO was driving home, and he said, so, Burton, what did you think of John Doe? I said, Paul, I thought he was great. If not, I wouldn't have flown him to California to visit with you. He goes, so what did the second line manager think of John Doe? I said, well, he thought he was good too. That's why he's out in California. So we went through this little routine. It was midnight. The lights were out in the house. So this went on for about 20 minutes, and I said, okay, Paul, more importantly, what did you think of John Doe? He said, I think John Doe's a liar, and I threw him out of my office. He goes, how many interviews did the guy go through? I said, oh, he went through about 8 interviews. He goes, did anybody really dig down deep and figure out? He said he did 150% of quota. His product only cost $20,000. He said his quota was $1.5 million. He goes, I asked him how many accounts he had, how many products he sold. It added up to about $600,000 in products he sold last year. He goes, finally, the guy just couldn't stand it. He goes, Paul, I did 50% of quota. I lied on my resume. So the guy left the office, didn't have the courtesy to call me, so I had an interesting call that lasted till 1 in the morning of how we had wasted company resources on over 6 interviews, a flight to California to hire that individual. And the bottom line on that was that we had 6 interviews, but each of the people in the line management role had very similar core values and motivation, and we all asked the guy the same question. We didn't drill down. We didn't ask him, okay, go to the whiteboard and show me how you achieved the end result that you achieved. Just show me. How many, just let's do the math. Well, the CEO asked him to do the math. The guy cracked at the blackboard, and he left, and I got that phone call. So, all right, well, thank you very much. Congratulations on the great companies that you all have.